Welcome, mortals, to the Beautiful Dead podcast. If you've come to this channel, you should stay for several reasons. One, you love vampires. This is a vampire podcast where we break down movies, TV shows, and books about vampires. We talk about the universe that's been created, how are they made, what rules do they have to follow, and more. Every once in a while, like October, I set aside the fiction and talk about all things vampire. 2, you have a podcast or would like to have a podcast and want to see behind the scenes of recording one. I edit out very little, so you will get to see mistakes and interruptions and learn along with me. Or 3, you're a fan of the podcast and you just want to watch me record it live. Or you like my books and you can't get enough of me. So, if you're still here, I promise it's due to your own free will, and I have not used my powers to keep you here. Now, watch the title cards and listen to the music along with the podcast. I'm gonna go get a bite, and I'll meet you back here, nice and full.
Oh, really?
Vampire! We take your candy!
Count Dracula.
I am Dracula. And I bid you welcome, Mr. Hunt, to my house. Come in.
Our first award goes to the vampire for most blood drained in a single evening.
The strength of the vampire is that people will not believe in him.
Good evening, my fellow vampire lovers. The sun is going down, and you know what that means. It's time for me to record another episode of my podcast, The Beautiful Dead. As always, I'm your host, Lena Nazari. You can find me at lenanazari.com. There's links to my social media. You can join my Fanged family and get updates from me, or you can go a step further and join my street team. These are the people who are out there talking about my books and podcasts and YouTube channel and appearances, and they get swag and postcards and stuff. So please feel free to do any of the above. You can just follow me on social media if you want. So we are going to make this sort of a quicker episode because, to be completely transparent, I am recording this the same day that I recorded last week's episode because I really need to get my next book out. So for time management, I am taking advantage of an entire 24-hour period with no children in the house and no work to get a bunch of episodes recorded so that I can now focus on writing. It is, as we speak, 20-something degrees, gray, crazy windy. We're getting snow, we're getting rain. It's the perfect weather to record this type of episode. Vampires can go out during the day because the cloud cover is so thick, you would think that it was like the middle of the night. So perfect vampire weather. Tonight we are going to talk about one that I saw when it first came out, and then every once in a while will come up in discussion. It's not one that a lot of people seem to know about, but the ones who do know about it comment on what a great movie it is, and they are not wrong. And that is Daybreakers. We have a Juliet sighting. Hi, Juliet. Come on in. Juliet is here with us, everybody. Nope, she ran away. Never mind. She doesn't like to be on camera, I guess. She's honestly probably going to get one of her toys to now come sleep at my feet, is probably what's happening. What do you guys think about leaving the tree up? I don't know. I kind of want to pack it up, but the problem is the animals like to sleep under it. So I feel bad packing it up. What do you guys think? Should I just leave it up all year? I don't know. Okay, Daybreakers. All right. So, for those of you who have not seen it in a long time or have never seen it, we're going to go ahead and do the summary. If you have not listened to the podcast, watched the channel before, massive spoiler alerts. I'm going to ruin everything. I talk about everything from beginning to end. Who hooks up with who kills who, how they die, all that good stuff. And for the purpose of this episode, I thought I would break out something I got in New Orleans, and it ties in perfectly with our material this evening, and that is my blood bag. My blood bag from the Vampire Cafe in New Orleans. And this has a pomegranate lemonade in it. So it's perfect. You just suck it right here out of the IV tubing. Perfect for this particular episode because, and we'll get to it, we're talking about a world where vampires are in charge and you can just go get blood in a restaurant. All right, you ready? Let's summarize it. In 2009, a plague caused by an infected bat transformed most of the world's population into vampires. The human population plummeted, leaving vampires with a severe shortage of blood. Vampires deprived of blood degenerate into a psychotic bat-like subsiders. That's what they call them, a subsider. Most humans are captive and harvested in laboratory farms while scientists research a synthetic substitute. True blood. As sunlight is deadly to vampires, underground passages and UV filtered cars are built for safe travel, while the few free humans travel by day, hiding in open spaces. It's 2019. Edward Dalton is the head hematologist for Bromley Marks, a pharmaceutical company that is the largest supplier of human blood in the U.S., and his colleague Christopher Caruso together are working on developing a blood substitute. Driving home from a failed experiment, Dalton accidentally runs another vehicle off the road. Discovering that the occupants are humans, Dalton hides them from the police. Before they part ways, their leader Audrey learns Edward's name and occupation from his ID badge. At home, Edward is surprised by his estranged brother Frankie. Frankie's gift of a bottle of pure human blood reignites a long-standing argument. Edward refuses to drink human blood and uses animal blood instead, while Frankie is much enjoying his vampire status. A gardener from Edward's neighborhood, who has now become a subsider, invades the house, forcing the brothers to kill it. The next morning, Audrey visits Edward's home, giving him instructions for a meeting. Edward meets Audrey and Lionel Elvis Cormac, a human who was once a vampire. Before Cormac can explain his reversion, a military team arrives with Frankie, who followed Edward and intends to capture Cormac and Audrey. Audrey knocks Frankie unconscious and the three escape. Cormac reveals that he was cured of vampirism when a car crash ejected him from his sunproof vehicle. Elvis bursted into flames in the sunlight but landed in a river, having been exposed to the sun for a precise length of time to turn him human again. Edward agrees to help Cormac find a way to recreate the cure and prevent human genocide. At a vineyard that night, Edward meets more humans and Senator Wes Turner, a vampire secretly helping the colony chase a cure. An approaching convoy of humans is captured, and vampire soldiers track the location of the vineyard, forcing Turner and the humans to flee. Audrey, Cormac, and Edward stay behind, and together they recreate the method by which Cormac reverted to human, curing Edward of vampirism. They later find Turner and all the humans dead. Allison Bromley, one of the captured humans, is revealed to be the daughter of Charles Bromley, who is the CEO of Bromley Marks. She refuses to become a vampire like her father. Charles has Frankie forcibly turn his daughter Allison into a vampire, but she refuses to drink human blood. Devolving into a subsider, Allison and others are executed by being burnt to death in the sunlight. Upset at witnessing Allison's death, Frankie seeks out his brother. The military then impose martial law to control the subsider population. Edward, Cormac, and Audrey break into Christopher's home and ask him to help spread the cure. Having finally discovered a viable blood substitute and feeling overshadowed by Edward, Christopher is uninterested in a cure and summons soldiers who capture Audrey while Cormac and Edward escape. They are found by Frankie, who agrees to help, but his instincts cause him to bite Cormac. But drinking his blood turns Frankie human, revealing that cured vampire blood is a cure in and of itself. Trying to save Audrey, Edward surrenders himself to Charles. He reveals his plan to start supplying the blood substitute to the general population while hunting humans and selling their blood for exorbitant prices. Edward taunts Charles into biting him, turning Charles now human. Edward leaves Charles to be killed by the hands of his blood-starved vampire troops. Frankie arrives and sacrifices himself to the soldiers, which allows Edward and Audrey to escape. In the ensuing feeding frenzy, only a few surviving soldiers are cured. To conceal the cure, Christopher shoots the soldiers and is about to shoot Edward and Audrey when Cormac kills himself with a crossbow. Kills him with a crossbow, not himself. The three survivors drive off into the sunrise with the cure that will change the general population back to restore humanity. This is one of those times where the summary is so much colder than the actual movie itself. The movie itself is much more exciting and action-packed than the summary truly lends it to be. But I assure you it's a very action-packed movie. Have another sip. Vampiric references and crossovers. I don't know why I'm tripping over my words today. I swear I just started drinking this. So Willem Dafoe is well known to this podcast. One of our vampire friends, Willem is. He is in this, and Shadow of the Vampire, and The Hunger, and Cirque du Freak, and now the new Nosferatu. For those of you who don't know, he plays the hunter in the new Nosferatu. I'm like, Willem, you're back at it with a vampire movie. I'm feeling like, other than actors who have done multiple movies, like anyone who did all of the Twilight movies, outside of that, I feel like Willem Dafoe has to be the actor with the most vampire movies. I mean, I know Christopher Lee played Dracula like 10 times, but Willem has done so many separate vampire films. I wish he would come on the podcast. All right. Let's break down the vampires. Relationship to humans. So I think I made this pretty clear with the summary, but just so you don't understand. One of the earliest scenes in the movie is a newscast with subtitles where the anchor is saying, humans were given the chance to assimilate, but they chose not to. They will be captured and farmed for their blood. So that very quickly, in a nutshell, tells you what it's like being human in this world. You know, it's interesting because the movie was done so long ago that 2019 is the future in this movie. But the idea that vampirism could take over that quickly, I've talked about so many times that if just biting someone turns them into a vampire, the vampires would take over and there would be no humans to feed from. So that's what it's like. Their relationship to humans is they are just looking to feed. That's it. And the human race has become so minuscule and so endangered that they are now selling, I think it was like 5% blood coffee, because the blood is so scarce that they were down to just getting this cup of coffee that was 5% blood when they, I'm sure, were used to 100% blood. Relationship to animals. This is never addressed, but I was noticing as I was watching the movie, you don't see a single animal in this entire movie. So I'm like, is that just because it was a closed set and they don't have animals and they didn't realize that someone was going to break this down someday? Or is it because all of the animals have already been killed? Now we know that Ethan Hawke's character is able to live off of animal blood. So there's animal blood somewhere, but like, were they all captured and they're being used for their blood? Where are the animals? Appearance. The vampires look human except for their eye color. So you'd see it's like a yellow or orange or red or amber. So the eyes are what make the vampires stand out. The subsiders, the ones who have devolved because they've gone too long without blood, they start to look like sort of a bat humanoid. So if you think of Dracula when he's in humanoid bat form in Bram Stoker's Dracula, that's kind of what they look like. If I can get a picture, I will post it right there. And then we see Edward's ears are starting to point as he goes longer without blood, almost like fairy ears. So we know that he's slowly starting to devolve. Fangs. 2 sharp fangs, and it appears as if they are present all the time. So they're not retractable. The fangs are there all the time. Blood. Yes, they need blood. That's the whole point of this whole movie, is they need blood, and the blood is disappearing because they've wiped out all the humans. Big problem. I'm sure if they could eat food as an option, they would be eating at this point in time, but the whole point is that they're running out of blood and they can't find any, and so they're starving and devolving, and then they end up like all killing each other. So trust me, if they could have a hamburger, they would have at that point. Sunlight. Sunlight will destroy these vampires. And this is an interesting idea of like, what would the world look like if vampires took over? And I don't remember what episode we talked about this, but we did reference this movie in that episode. Like UV blocking cars, and then some of the cars, everything is blocked, and they have a camera system that you use to drive so you can see the outside through cameras. There's also underground tunnels built into everything so the vampires can travel from business to business during the day. Eventually, it is the quick exposure of the sunlight that cures the heroes. So sunlight, along with blood, plays a very big part in this story. Sleep. It looks like as long as they're out of the sunlight, they can sleep anywhere they want. Couches, beds, floors, whatever. Their car, doesn't matter, as long as they're out of the sunlight. Holy items are never addressed. These are very modern vampires. I would be surprised if they were, well, because it's even presented like a virus from the very beginning. It's transmitted via a bat, so that tells me that it's not a holy item, religious possession thing. It's actually just a virus. Rules. They do not cast a reflection, but that appears to be the only rule. They don't need to be invited in. They don't have to sleep on their soil. None of that stuff. Powers. They don't have any special powers. They appear to be stronger than a human, but they're not faster. There's no telekinesis, telepathy. There's no climbing. Well, there's nothing like that. They're just stronger than humans. That's all. How are they made? So we talked about the original thing seems to have been transmitted via a bat, which is a very old idea. And then in order for you to become a vampire, we only see it the one time, and that's when Frankie is told that he has to turn Allison into a vampire, and he does it with a single bite. So apparently you bite him and that's it. Now what's interesting is, if he's that starved for human blood, I guess he wouldn't be, because he just brought a bottle of pure human blood to his brother. So I guess the soldiers, they did say one of the reasons that people join the vampiric army is to get a blood supply, but eventually even that's going to run out. Heartbeat and breathing. So we do get to learn about this, because when they hook him up to experiment on him, when they hook Edward up to do the cure, he gets hooked up to a vitals machine, and we see no heartbeat, no respirations, and then he's hit with the sun, and it starts for a second and stops, and he has to do this experiment multiple times, being exposed to the sun and then having the fire extinguished before he does now suddenly have a heartbeat and respiration. So this is one of those times where we get to know vampires have neither. They do not breathe and they do not have a heartbeat. How do they die? Sunlight. So that's a big one. We know they burst into flames in the sunlight. We see one of the subsiders get sliced open down the middle, so very quickly is exsanguinated. That's a way. The humans carry a crossbow, and we see a vampire killed that way, and I do believe it was through the heart. But I will tell you, when he was pierced in the heart, he burst. So I always like when the vampires like burst or turn to ash. That way I know for sure the vampire is dead. And of course, as we said, drinking the blood of a cured vampire will now cure you. So if you drink a human that used to be a vampire, then you will now turn human. Good or bad. Like so many of these movies that we cover, you can choose to be good or bad. Becoming a vampire does not suddenly make you a bad person. A lot of the vampires choose to be bad people and succumb to their basic needs. But then you see someone like Edward who rises above all that, drinks animal blood, and chooses to be a good guy. Tropes I love and tropes I hate. I love the vampires out in the open trope. So we see this in True Blood, we see this in this movie, we see it in the Anita Blake series. The idea of vampires just being out, I always thought was so interesting. I love the idea of them having their own businesses, their own law enforcement. I also love vampires working together to rule the world. Now, these vampires that are ruling the world, not good vampires, and terrible business practice. Because how do you allow your food source to run out? So dumb. So not the smartest of vampires, but I did love that. And of course they're using the whole farming humans for blood trope. That one's a classic, but it looks like they waited way too long to start doing this because now they're trying to track down like the last remaining humans to farm them. We should have been doing that from day one, dummy. And don't make everyone a vampire because now you have no food source. Just saying. Tropes I hate. You know, there wasn't anything in this that I cringed at. Everything they use in this world fits into the storyline. It's needed for the storyline. So there was nothing in here that I sort of groaned about. It is a very creative vampire movie. It's something different. We'll get to that when we talk about my thoughts. Okay, we haven't done ratings in a little while, so I'm excited to get back to the ratings. Cue the ratings music. There it is. How scary or evil are the vampires of Daybreakers? All right. They rule the world. Power play. They've made the whole like world work for them. They have their own army, their own police force. They pull their own weakened vampires right out into the sun, which is brutal, but a good way to control the population, I guess. They hunt humans for the sole purpose of farming them. And this is all bad, right? Bad. But there is a way to control these vampires that's like not all that complex, and it's the fact that they're running out of blood. So like I said, it's great that you rule the world. It's terrible of you to pull your own weakened vampires out into the sun, but also pretty smart, right? The only problem is you guys didn't think out the fact that you were going to run out of your own food supply. So that's just dumb. They are bound by the sun. A crossbow to the chest will kill them from afar, so you don't even need to get that close. They also seem so focused on their own needs and so quick to turn and kill each other that really kind of hurts their scare score because they're not hyper focused on just killing humans. There's so much infighting and greed and selfishness that they kind of hurt themselves. They also can choose to be good, so that hurts the scare score. So all in all, I would give them sort of a middle of the road. And so I'm going to give them 5 out of 10 stakes to the heart for scariness and evil. Pretty solid on the evil score. I mean, these are bad guys, right? And they're choosing to be bad. That being said, there is a lot of stuff working against them. So complete world domination, probably not going to happen. And they're bested by 3 humans at the end. And they have their own traitors in their own midst. So there you go. How sexy or alluring are the vampires of Daybreakers? So not the highest of scare scores, right? We're right in the middle. So what does that mean for sexiness? Well, the scare score is better than the sexiness score because they are scarier and more evil than they are sexy. They have zero charisma. No human is going to fall into immediate lust with them. The humans actually run screaming. I don't think that these vampires even care about sex. You never see it even hinted one time that there's romance or lust or passion. They don't ooze sensuality. I'm pretty sure they only care about feeding. And when they do feed, it is a rough feed. It's not even like a sexy, sensual feed. It's a brutal feed. They do get their honorary point, and I'll throw in a point for them being relatively human looking and not that hard to look at. Ethan Hawke, I mean, is a very pretty man. But that's the end of my charity. So that gives them a 2 out of 10 onks for sexiness and allure. So not like necessarily pure evil, not super scary, and not sexy at all. They're just kind of there. They're businessmen, okay? My thoughts. I don't know why I waited so long to cover this one. I went back and rewatched it and just remembered how cool it was. It's so creative. It's so interesting. It was set up for a sequel for sure, but since the movie is from 2009, we're probably not getting a sequel. Nor do we really need one. I thought it was wrapped up so nicely. And then with our 3 heroes like sort of riding off into the sunset, you could decide for yourself how it turns out. This is another one that you could watch with somebody that doesn't necessarily like vampire movies. This is a good action movie. It's very solid. And it reminded me a lot of Total Recall or Blade Runner. It's very futuristic. I love the idea of the vampires not just coming out of the coffin, but saying, oh, no. Not only are we here, but we're adjusting the entire world to us. And now you guys are the minority. I love that idea. It's an hour and a half long, but it feels so fast. I definitely could have watched another hour of this. Plus, we get this amazing quote that I had to stop and write down. Being a human in a world full of vampires is about as safe as barebacking a $5 whore. I'm gonna put that on a mug. That's right. Being a human in a world full of vampires is about as safe as barebacking a $5 whore. I had to say it twice because amazing writing to whoever wrote that. All right, that is it for Daybreakers. This is a quick one. I told you it was going to be a quick one. Great for a run on a treadmill or whatever you guys do out there. Join me next week. We are going to talk about a very, very little known movie called Blood Ties. Not the TV show, the made-for-TV movie. I found it on Amazon Prime. Go check it out. Join me back here next Sunday. I'm gonna finish my blood bag from the Vampire Cafe, and I'm gonna get this edited, and then I'm gonna get to writing. All right, guys. I wish you wicked hugs and bloody kisses. Good evening.